I've put over 100 hours into Donkey Kong Bonanza since July.
Well,
I reached
that's awful. I'm
100%
sorry.
completion on my first playthrough, did a 0 banana run on my second, and I've been using a third to practice crazy speedrun techniques and push DK's incredible movement in more extreme ways. 2 months after giving Bonanza a 10 in my original review, I remain in awe of how DK's frenetic, destructive abilities work masterfully in tandem with the Underground's meticulously designed breakable environments. Nintendo nailed the relationship between Bonanza's world and its main character, and the new DK Island and Emerald Rush DLC is a really fun excuse to keep experimenting in this playground in a remixed, more frantic way, even if a slight lack of content and a few minor issues keep it from reaching the same inspired heights as the base game. Before we get too far into things, a quick note. Bonanza's DLC is only accessible after clearing the main story, and it acts as somewhat of an extended post-game. I'm not going to outright spoil Bonanza here, but if you're still drilling your way to the planet core and don't want to know anything about it, you may want to come back to this review once you've reached the end credits. That said, you should also do so before you dive too far past them, because the DLC makes some helpful changes to the original endgame grind that you may want to know about. There are two intertwined halves of the DLC to discuss. DK Island is a new level to explore, while Emerald Rush is a roguelite take on Bonanza that makes up the majority of the content found in this combined package. DK Island is a wonderful love letter to Rare's Donkey Kong Country trilogy and Donkey Kong 64. It's a nostalgic return to where DK platformers really began, comparable to exploring Super Mario 64's Mushroom Kingdom and Super Mario Odyssey's post-game. It's overflowing with great references, from obvious ones like DK's Treehouse and King K. Rool's Gangplank Galleon from Donkey Kong Country, to deeper cuts like DKC2's gold target tucked away in the corner on the ship's main deck. As a huge fan of Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, my favorite part of DK Island has to be the bongos out at sea. There are so many more references to DK history I don't want to give away, but if you have any love for this series, you'll probably get a kick out of discovering all its Easter eggs too.
You think that's how Nintendo does it? You think what they do is they strangle off like a game series like Donkey Kong for like a couple years or like a decade, and then they bring it back, giving like the same like platformer mechanics that every single freaking Nintendo game seem to have, like the same copy and paste mentality that they seem to keep getting away with for whatever reason, just by bringing back one character and making it the sole reason why the game is back. You think that's how they get away with it? Any other game developer, I kid you not, any other game developer that would do this instantaneously would be annihilated. But it's just because it's Nintendo, it's acceptable. I don't understand it. I genuinely don't get it.
Beyond that though, there's not actually that much to do on DK Island. There are no Bonandium gems or fossils to hunt down, and no challenge rooms to conquer. Instead, the gold bonus stages found in Bonanza's main layers are all collected here, making DK Island a convenient place to grind for cash. Bonanza's original postgame sees Grumpy Kong demanding tens of thousands of gold pieces to unlock some of the final collectibles and reach 100% completion, and those who have access to DK Island will have a much easier time grinding than I did before the DLC was out. Elsewhere, DK's old parrot companion Squawks is here, and he will hunt down one of DK Island's dozens of collectible statues in exchange for Bonandium chips. Shiny replicas of Bonanza's allies, enemies, and Kongs live in galleries across DK Island, adding to its value as a nostalgic DK history museum. You'll need to grind thousands of Bonandium chips to buy them all, but thankfully, those are the main reward of the Emerald Rush mode. I wouldn't recommend buying the DLC if you're only interested in this component. It's a little odd that DK Island wasn't included as a post-game reward in the base game, since it's so comparable to Odyssey's Mushroom Kingdom.
You know why they didn't? You know, I'll tell you why. It's because Greedtendo wanted money. That's why.
Behind paid DLC feels kind of like a money-hungry move from Nintendo. This is the company that just charged $10 for Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour though, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised at this somewhat eye-roll-worthy choice. Fortunately, Bonanza's DLC does a much better job justifying its $20 price tag in its Emerald Rush mode. Void Kong has
$20.
found his way to DK Island, and he's moved on from his obsession with Banandium Gold to
That's
set his
kinda
sights
crazy.
on a new prize, Emerald Ore, which is the exact same but green. Void hires DK and Pauline to collect as much Emerald Ore as possible, and this introduction includes some cute follow-ups and resolutions for Bonanza's main story and characters. I've seen some online chatter calling Emerald Rush a simple minigame that should have been free, but it's much more than that. It's a fully featured side mode that turns Bonanza's destruction-based platforming into a fun, replayable roguelite. Each run takes place across a series of rounds, ranging from 6 to 15 depending on the difficulty level selected, where you have 100 seconds to reach a quota of Emerald Ore to pay Void. If you
That's
don't
it?
reach the goal, your run comes to an end right there. If you do, you can keep working on your build for the rest of the timer to stock up for the next round, where the quota progressively multiplies. Emerald Rush feels like a combination of Splatoon's Salmon Run and Side Order modes. Personality-wise, it clearly takes inspiration from Salmon Run. Both feature a hilariously mean boss screaming at you to meet your quota through a walkie-talkie over
Look at that. A copy and paste game. Who would have thought? Nintendo? Never. No.
increasingly difficult rounds.
Come
This is also
on,
Nintendo's
guys.
first take on a
Why
roguelite.
do you keep feeding so much money to this company? All they care about is their bottom dollar, their bottom line, dude.
Since last
Like,
year's
come on.
excellent Side Order DLC for Splatoon 3, which notably also came bundled with a nostalgic hub to explore. It feels like Donkey Kong is following the exact same playbook, as Emerald Rush features dozens of perks that impact your score multiplier in a very similar fashion. Each run begins by stripping DK of all his skills, including his 5 Bonanza transformations at higher difficulties, and it's up to you to power him back up while also gathering piles of Emerald Ore. This is done by frantically exploring layers, fast traveling around with a limited number of barrel cannons, collecting emerald bananas and fossils that restore DK's skills and give you the choice of one of 3 perks, and completing goals Void Kong assigns you at specific locations across the map. I love starting from nothing, giving me a place to put all of DK's high-level base techniques to use, and I found I was able to reach a lot of areas in really cool, satisfying ways. But the most important part of Emerald Rush are the perks that alter how much Emerald Ore appears. There are generic power-ups like generating more when defeating a certain type of enemy, but the most exciting ways to score are the Groove subset of perks, which revolve around multipliers that increase the more you perform a specific action. For instance, my favorite is Turf Groove, where more emerald appears based on the total distance traveled by turf surfing. The second this perk shows up, my whole playstyle changes. Suddenly, I'm trying to get everywhere by turf surfing, which is a big challenge on denser layers. Emerald Rush leads to scenarios you'd never see in the base game, and with such an incredible foundation to build a roguelite on, it's always fun seeing how you can push the mechanics.
Why are all these developers trying to do these roguelike and light games? Just do what you do best. It's almost like every game now, they're trying to suck as much time as they can out of you. It's so weird. What is up with that? Even with single player games, like what's the deal with that?
Stacking multiple perks like this on top of each other can lead to completely busted results, and I scored well over 1 million points on a few runs, where my target goal was less than half that. If you thought the base game had a lot happening on screen at once, Emerald Rush achieves a new level of unregulated chaos, like one run where I got tons of bonus Emerald Ore for defeating enemies as Zebra Bonanza, leading to 30 minutes of sprinting around non-stop, destroying everything in sight to flood the screen with an overwhelming, borderline unbelievable amount of Emerald Ore. It's not always a breeze though. Like most roguelites, a lot of your success depends on what skills randomly show up, and I lost multiple runs by banking on a certain Bonanza to spawn by building my perks around it, and ultimately failing when it never arrived. Speaking of Bonanzas, Emerald Rush really rewards mastery over these 5 powered-up forms, as knowing the best way to take advantage of their unique strengths and swapping between them on the fly results in a high skill ceiling fitting of an endgame mode. I do wish Emerald Rush went a little bit further with its abilities though. Seeing big numbers get bigger is always enjoyable, but with a few rare exceptions, there are no brand new abilities to find, and the perks simply make DK's already existing moves worth more points. It changes the scoring and the way you play, but beyond reclaiming powers I'm already very used to using in the base game, it never meaningfully expands the options available to you.
Why would
The
it?
best roguelites make you feel
Why
more
would they do that?
powerful throughout a run.
What? Make new things? Huh? It's a foreign concept to this company.
by giving you fresh moves as you go, and adding more exciting techniques to DK's toolkit could have elevated this from a good roguelite mode to a great one. Completing runs earns you piles of Banandium chips and rating points that unlock cute bonus costumes, more powerful perks in the rotation, and new layers to tackle. Emerald Rush doesn't take place in new areas besides DK Island. Instead, DK and Pauline return to familiar locations from Bonanza's campaign. And one of the coolest parts of this mode is how it rewards you for being intimately familiar with these layers. Emerald versions of Banandium gems and fossils are found in the same locations as their counterparts in the main campaign. And knowing exactly where to find a vein of 3 fossils or a bunch of bananas makes Emerald Rush feel like a cool B-side to the main story. And the getaways you've built during the main story become essential fast travel points during a run, further incentivizing you to explore each layer to the fullest.
I knew we could do it!
In that same vein, Void Kong's objective will sometimes vaguely order you to do something like give Cranky Kong a high five. Unlike the usual orders, these objectives don't place a marker on your map, leaving it up to you to find them on your own. Thanks to my 100 plus hours and multiple playthroughs, it didn't take long for me to pinpoint Cranky hanging out on a big tree branch in the forest layer. I initially thought reusing areas from the base game would be a weakness of Emerald Rush, but the way it leverages your knowledge of familiar locations is a really smart, novel way to effectively reuse old content. Still, this is another place I wish Emerald Rush had added a little bit extra to keep things fresh. There are no new enemy types, and it never introduces boss encounters that could have nicely broken up the pace of runs that last up to 45 minutes.
Jeez.
I reached the end credits after about 6 hours, and while the DLC's post-game opens up several more layers to play Emerald Rush in, I'm starting to feel a little burnt out on the formula. I'll probably only stick around to reach 100% completion out of obligation to the base game I've so thoroughly completed. And when I do return, I'll almost certainly throw on my own music or a podcast. The pair of main themes is undeniably catchy, with flourishes from Pauline that change depending on your active transformation. But I could definitely go without hearing either for a while after 10 hours in the DLC.
Alright. There we go, here we go.
The best part about Donkey
5.
Kong Bonanza's DK Island and Emerald Rush DLC is that it gives me a reason to keep experimenting in one of my favorite playgrounds Nintendo has ever created. DK Island is a nostalgic rush that prioritizes fun callbacks to Rare's golden era over stuff to actually do.
So you're gonna be a
Despite
5 or an
the warm,
8?
fuzzy feelings I had while exploring, I can't
say
help
they're
but
gonna
think
give
this
it an
would have
8.
been more fitting as a final post-game reward in
that gold.
Bonanza itself rather than DLC locked
Jesus.
behind a paywall. But the bulk of this expansion is housed in Emerald Rush, which let me unleash DK's craziest parkour possibilities and strategically balance each transformation's strengths to set new high scores. Its perk system creates unique ways to play you'd never consider in the original campaign, and it smartly returns to old locations and tests your knowledge of important places in a way that feels like a fitting endgame counterpart to the main story. That said, I wish Emerald Rush had introduced more new abilities and enemies to keep me around a bit longer than the 10 hours I've put in so far. If you're hungry for more DK and aren't opposed to a remixed roguelite formula, Emerald Rush is probably worth the additional investment. Otherwise, Bonanza's DLC is an enjoyable but inessential expansion to DK and Pauline's
That standard
grand adventure.
7.
For more,
That
check out my full
standard
review
7
of Donkey
from their
Kong Bonanza or our
AAA
review-
game developer. Huh.